It was supposed to be just another primetime political segment. Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General and seasoned conservative commentator, was invited to a live broadcast to debate Representative Jasmine Crockett on national television. The topic: government transparency and recent ethics investigations into congressional behavior. The tension had been building for weeks, especially after Crockett's blunt public comments about GOP leadership. The producers knew it would be fiery, but they didn't expect what was coming. As the cameras rolled, the split screen showed both women already prepared for battle. Crockett sat poised, arms folded. Bondi leaned slightly forward, a familiar smirk playing at the corner of her lips. The host barely finished the introduction before Bondi launched in. "You talk about ethics, Congresswoman," Bondi sneered, "but your record looks like a checklist of excuses and entitlement. You're not interested in truth, you're interested in trending." Crockett raised an eyebrow. "Pam, I know you're used to soundbites instead of substance, but I came prepared with receipts." The crowd buzzed online as Bondi cut her off. "Receipts? What are you, a TikTok influencer now? You're more focused on clout than constituents." Gasps echoed in the studio. The host tried to regain control, but it was already spiraling. Representative Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She leaned slightly forward, her expression sharpening with precision. "Pam, maybe if you spent more time reading legislation and less time rehearsing zingers for your next Fox News reel, you'd understand what actual governance looks like." The host attempted to mediate. "Let's keep it professional, ladies," but Crockett wasn't finished. "You want to talk about ethics? Let's start with your involvement in the 2020 election lawsuits. How many of those did you actually win?" "Zero. Because facts matter, even when you pretend they don't." Pam's eyes narrowed. "Oh, so now you're a legal scholar too?" "I was fighting for millions of Americans who didn't trust the system." "No, you were performing for a base that thrives on fiction," Crockett shot back. "And now you're here trying to lecture me like I'm your intern. I'm a sitting congresswoman, and I'm not here to be your punching bag." The studio went silent. The host froze. Twitter was already exploding. Pam paused just long enough to regain her calm exterior. "Well, Congresswoman, if you'd rather play the victim than answer questions, maybe you're in the wrong chair tonight." It looked like Pam had won that round. Her smile returned. Her voice cool and composed again. The host signaled the commercial break. The screen faded to black, but Bondi didn't realize her mic was still hot. As the screen went dark for the commercial break, the cameras cut, but the microphones didn't. Pam Bondi, unaware her audio was still being fed to the control room, and, more dangerously, to the livestream delay feed, leaned back in her chair and muttered under her breath, "God, that woman is exhausting. No wonder nobody takes her seriously outside her Twitter bubble." A producer's voice crackled faintly in the studio earpieces, urgently whispering, "Pam, your mic is still," but she didn't hear it. Bondi chuckled, shaking her head. "She's a walking attitude problem in a blazer. Someone needs to remind her she's not auditioning for The View." In the control booth, an intern's jaw dropped. The tech director mouthed, "Cut the feed," but the 7-second delay had already passed, and the moment was already live on air for tens of thousands watching online. Crockett's expression hadn't changed. She sat still, eyes narrowing slowly, like she sensed it, or maybe just knew the game better than anyone thought. By the time they returned from commercial, the mood had changed. Pam sat upright again, smiling, but her face was paler. The host, looking slightly rattled, resumed, "Welcome back. If you're just joining us," Crockett cut in smoothly. "Actually, before we continue, I think the audience deserves to know what was just said during the break. Or should I play the clip myself?" Pam froze. The host blinked. Let's stay on topic," but it was too late. On social media, #HotMikeBondi was already trending. Pam Bondi's frozen smile was starting to crack. Jasmine Crockett calmly reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out her phone. "You know, Pam," she said, holding the device casually, "in case you haven't figured it out yet, everything's on the record these days, especially when you forget your mic is live." The host's eyes darted nervously between the two women. "Congresswoman, maybe we should." "No, let's not," Crockett interrupted. "Let's talk about what just happened. You called me a walking attitude problem. You mocked me for doing my job. And you said, nobody takes me seriously. Well, let's see how seriously the public takes that clip." Pam opened her mouth to speak, but Crockett kept going, now turning slightly to the camera. "This is what women in power deal with. Especially women like me. We get dismissed, mocked, whispered about, until someone forgets to turn their mic off and the truth leaks out." Bondi finally snapped, her voice rising slightly. "Oh please, don't make this about identity politics. It was off the record." "So you admit you said it?" Crockett asked with a half-smile. Pam flinched. The host jumped in, "All right, let's stay focused on the issues," but Crockett had already struck the nerve. And the audience knew it. Pam tried to retake control. "Fine. I said it. And I stand by it. Because I'm tired of performative outrage and hollow talking points." The studio went still again. Crockett calmly placed her phone back in her pocket. "Then I guess we're both clear on who's performing." The tension was now electric. Every word felt heavier than the last. Pam Bondi sat stiffly, visibly trying to collect herself. She glanced toward the producers off camera, clearly hoping someone would intervene. No one did. Crockett, meanwhile, leaned into the silence like a seasoned trial attorney who knew the jury was already with her. The host cleared his throat awkwardly. "Well, let's move forward with the discussion." "We are moving forward," Crockett said sharply, still facing Bondi. "Forward from the days when women in politics have to just smile and swallow it when they're disrespected on live television. You said what you said, Pam. And you didn't even whisper it. That's how normal it is to you." Pam finally spoke again, but her voice had lost its earlier swagger. "Look, I may have been unfiltered during a break. But I didn't come here to be lectured. I came here to debate issues." "Then debate them," Crockett fired back. "But when you drag people personally and get caught, don't pretend you're above it." Social media was in chaos. Commentators were already chiming in, "Pam Bondi just self-sabotaged live." Crockett handled that like a pro. Calm. Controlled. Ruthless. That hot mic moment just changed the tone of the whole debate. Back in the studio, the host tried one last time to transition. "We're going to pivot now to the recent ethics panel discussions in Congress," but the moment was bigger than the agenda. And Bondi knew it. She took a slow breath, eyes flicking to the camera again. "If I crossed a line, that wasn't my intention." Crockett gave her a measured look. "You didn't cross it, Pam. You revealed it." As the segment continued, it became clear the real story was no longer the policy debate. Behind the scenes, producers were scrambling. News outlets were already pulling the audio. Clips of Bondi's hot mic moment were spreading like wildfire across X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and political YouTube channels. Major headlines flashed within the hour: Pam Bondi caught mocking Representative Jasmine Crockett on live mic, fallout begins, Crockett dismantles Bondi after disrespectful comments leak, hot mic disaster, Pam Bondi's off-camera insult goes viral. Meanwhile, Crockett's team leaned into the moment. Her staff posted a calm still image of her from the interview with the caption, "Poised. Prepared. Unbothered." Hashtag mic still hot. By the time the show ended, viewers weren't talking about policy. They were dissecting every expression, every twitch, every word from that break. In the green room after the show, Bondi's phone was buzzing non-stop. Her PR advisor walked in with a tight jaw and a tablet in hand. "Pam, we've got a situation. The clip's already got over 3 million views, and climbing. Pam exhaled sharply. It was supposed to be off-air. It wasn't part of the segment. Doesn't matter, her advisor replied. You were smiling when you said it. That's what's burning. Across town, Crockett sat in her car, still in full makeup and mic'd from the interview. She looked out the window, checking her own phone as it vibrated over and over with alerts. Her chief of staff texted, "You just became the headline. Bondi gave you a gift, and the nation saw who you really are." Crockett didn't reply right away. She was already thinking about what came next. The next morning, the political world was split into two camps, and both were loud. Cable news networks led with the headline, "Pam Bondi's hot mic disaster, did she go too far?" On conservative outlets, anchors attempted to spin it as harmless off-the-cuff commentary. "She was just venting," one pundit said. "Everyone does it during breaks. This is media manipulation." But the damage was done. Bondi's usual allies were noticeably quiet. A few GOP strategists even admitted off the record that the optics were a nightmare. Privately, some of them texted one another, "It's not just what she said, it's how confidently she said it. She thought she was untouchable." Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett's following surged overnight. Her official website nearly crashed from the spike in traffic. Donations poured in. Memes were everywhere. One showed her sitting calmly with the caption, "Keep your mic on. I want America to hear everything." Back in Tampa, Bondi was holed up with her PR team. "We need to release a statement," her press aide insisted. "A real one. No deflecting." Pam looked frustrated. "If I apologize now, it'll look like I'm admitting guilt." Her communications director raised an eyebrow. "You are guilty. It's on tape. You mocked a sitting congresswoman during a break, and America heard it." After a long pause, Pam nodded. "Fine. Draft something that sounds sincere, but not weak. I'm not groveling." Across the aisle, Crockett sat with her team in D.C., sipping coffee and reviewing the headlines. One aide asked, "Should we respond more? Go on another show?" Crockett shook her head. "Nope. Let her talk. Let them talk. I've already won this one, by staying quiet when it mattered, and sharp when it counted." By noon, Pam Bondi's team released the carefully crafted statement. "During a commercial break on a recent broadcast, I made a comment that was not intended for public consumption. While it was off the cuff and not reflective of my broader respect for public servants, I recognize that it came across as dismissive. I regret the tone and the distraction it has caused. My focus remains on honest debate and the issues that matter most to Americans." Reaction was immediate, and divided. Supporters of Bondi applauded her for addressing the moment and refusing to fold. But for many others, the apology fell flat. Crockett didn't respond directly. Instead, she posted a simple tweet, "The tone always reveals the truth." #still unbothered, that tweet alone garnered over 400,000 likes in under an hour. Later that evening, she appeared on a primetime interview, not for a debate, but to discuss the moment and what it said about the political climate. "We've reached a point where disrespect is disguised as disagreement," she told the anchor. "And women, especially women who don't look like Pam Bondi, are expected to stay calm when insulted, just to prove we belong. Well, I don't need to prove anything." The interview was electric. Clips of her calm delivery and piercing commentary made the rounds on TikTok, news sites, and political podcasts. Analysts began floating her name as a rising national voice. Pam, meanwhile, remained silent the rest of the day. Her team canceled a scheduled interview. One producer leaked a message from her staff, "She's not ready to go back on camera yet. She's reassessing the optics." By the end of the night, the political tides had shifted. What began as a simple panel debate had become a national flashpoint, and Pam Bondi's name was now a case study in what not to do when the mic is hot. Inside conservative political circles, the whispers had grown louder. At a closed-door fundraising event in Tallahassee, a prominent donor pulled aside one of Bondi's aides and said bluntly, "She just became a liability. If she can't handle live TV without detonating herself, why would we trust her with messaging in an election year?" Meanwhile, several Republican lawmakers distanced themselves quietly, no public tweets of support, no radio shout-outs, no follow-up commentary. Pam's usual allies weren't rushing to her defense. One strategist told a reporter anonymously, she tried to humiliate someone on air and ended up torching her own credibility. It wasn't just a gaffe, it exposed something deeper. And for Jasmine Crockett, the moment had become something bigger than a personal victory. She was invited to appear on The Readout, Morning Joe, and The Daily Show all in 1 week. Each host framed the moment not just as a takedown, but a symbol of shifting power. "This wasn't about a mic," Crockett said in one segment. "It was about how confident some people are that their disrespect will go unpunished. The mic just caught the truth." As her popularity rose, PACs began showing interest. Advocacy groups reached out for partnerships. Even grassroots organizations began circulating digital flyers with her face beside the words, "Calm. Clear. Relentless." Pam, on the other hand, spent her weekend avoiding the press. Rumors swirled that she was being reconsidered for an upcoming campaign advisory role. Her PR team drafted a second, stronger apology, but it was never released. She refused. "If I double back now," she told her team, "I'll look weak and wrong. We ride it out." But America had already made up its mind. 1 week later, Pam Bondi returned to television, but not as the headliner. She was booked for a short segment on a lower-rated cable show, framed as a commentator perspective, rather than a key guest. Her presence was noticeably downplayed, her smile strained. The spark that once carried her through political debates had dimmed. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett was commanding primetime interviews, invited to speak at national forums, and floated on shortlists for future committee leadership. At a live town hall in Atlanta, a young woman stood during the Q&A and asked Crockett, "What gave you the discipline to stay so composed when Pam disrespected you like that?" Crockett paused, then said, "Because if I lost my temper, the headline would have been my reaction, not her disrespect. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do, is let the world hear exactly who someone really is." The crowd rose to its feet in applause. Bondi's mic moment had done more than spark a controversy. It had drawn a line in public perception, between the politics of performance and the politics of presence. By the end of the month, #HotMicBondi had faded from the trending list. But Crockett's name remained. Not as a trending topic, but as a growing force. Pam's team quietly shifted her strategy toward local commentary and podcast appearances, hoping time would fade the memory. But for many viewers, that moment, that smirk, that voice, that "she's a walking attitude problem" line, had carved itself into the political consciousness. And Crockett never had to raise her voice to win.